It reminds me of this story I heard from somebody who may or may not be my brother, and he told me about going to Indonesia, and I think it was Indonesia. Is that where he licked the toad? Either in Indonesia or somewhere in Central
Oh,
America, he licked the toad, and he's like, we gotta go lick the toad," and I'm like, I'm fully ready to lick the toad.
oh, well, all right. Hello, the Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you once again for inviting us into your headphones, your car, your home, your mind. Davey Sipes, how are you today, sir?
I'm breathing in and out as is instructed by the Surgeon General, sir. How are you doing, Jesse Davidson?
I'm doing good. The citizens demanded another podcast, and we are here giving them a podcast.
Ugh, those hateful swine. Here you go. Here's your podcast. It greats. No, we love you.
Oh, the
That
big gavel of freedom and justice.
the gavel moves swiftly through the halls of justice.
It does.
Oh, and all that stuff. So, how are you? What's new with you?
Well,
What are we
I'm
doing?
I'm wearing a different T-shirt from the last time we did a podcast, so there's that. So
Nice.
from week to week, I've been changing my wardrobe, and that's been nice. The lava lamp is still doing good. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just working on musicianship stuff, working on writing different pieces of things, and yeah, I don't know, just mainly focusing on being creative because with not really going anywhere and doing the social thing right now, I have no better time to actually do that and put some work in. So
Okay.
that's
When you
been
say,
me. What about you?
well,
Hmm.
my question is, when you say doing the social thing, is that sex?
I mean,
Is that
that's
sex?
definitely it. It's
I've heard of
that's
sex,
a sub.
and
So
I want to know more. You can talk more about it.
so, so the social thing is the main genre, and then sex is a subgenre within that. So
Oh, like stoner rock
yeah,
v heavy metal, kind of. Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
it's like it falls under the category of rock and roll,
Okay.
but it's not the only thing. It's hanging with friends in person. It's doing the band practice thing. All of it's kind of on hold at the moment. So
Oh,
it's digging into the creative side of things while I have time to do that.
there you go. Turning your somethings into plowshares or whatever the Bible stuff
Yeah,
is. Whatever it is. Welcome to
make
my whatever Sunday school.
making lemons out of lemonade
Making
or
lemons out of
lemons
malt
into lemonade.
liquor. Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
whatever your
Whatever it
process
was.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, sir? How's your how are you doing?
I thank you for asking. I've been running down a dream, and I've been going wherever it leads, and we're making our history. And that's all I can say right now is just Tom Petty lyrics.
I'm waiting for you to pick up your guitar and
Woohoo!
start doing an awesome solo.
No guitar
That's what I'm waiting
nearby.
for.
No, this old
It's
crazy man
fair.
doesn't play for free. But I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to discuss the subject matter at hand, who is our interview and test subject. He volunteered, he signed forms. His name's Josh Bennett.
Yes.
You are a
Uh
friend with him. Why don't you tell us all about this man person?
yes, I will tell you about this man person. Josh is not only a wonderful human being and a stand-up individual as a person, but uh musically he has toured with Acidic, and that was his main band for years. As the guitar player of that band, and now he has moved to Colorado and he has been teaching at the School of Rock there, which is a chain of music schools, for the past few years. And so, yeah, he's basically just, kind of has this experience of not just, being in the music touring world, but as a music educator, and is taking his time there and applying it to the students. And, with Acidic, he has a wealth of experience with, touring all over the country, opening up for bands like Hinder, Trapped, like a few years ago, I think around like 2013, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, touring overseas with the State Department. and they were part of a program of like being cultural ambassadors for the United States. It's called American Music Abroad, and basically, and that was he was teaching music over there, and they would kind of introduce people to like American culture and kind of give them a lesson on that and through music and a bunch of other different
Oh,
things. So
that's
yeah,
cool.
he's
That's really cool.
yeah, so he's, an all-around well-experienced person when it comes to many facets of music and why we do this and,
Thought you meant
all sorts of
sexually.
things like
Okay.
that. Yeah, exactly. Back to
You
the
usually
genre
do whenever you say the
subgenre
word
thing.
experience, you do the fingers in the air and you say it really long and drawn out. You flick your tongue. You
Yeah,
do suggestive
exactly.
eyebrow. You do a whole set of things.
Yeah, I throw an
That
old,
was it.
yeah,
They almost got me. They're coming after me.
I start going nudge, nudge. Know what I mean?
Hey,
Wink,
what do you
wink.
mean?
Say
Say
no
no,
more.
say
Say no
no.
more.
Nudge, nudge. Oh.
Yeah, so I just I always I always love a chance to talk to Josh about anything and just catching up. So I'm glad we're getting to do that today. So
And I love talking to strangers,
yeah,
who Josh is to me.
yeah. So let's get to it.
Chatter, chatter.
Josh, what's up? Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me. I do appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, the last time we've talked and done the Zoom thing and hung out a little bit, during all of this craziness. But the last time I actually saw you was a couple of years ago, playing a show out in Colorado. And,
Yeah, when you were on tour.
Yeah, so it was. It's always a good time to hang out and talk to you, whether it's in person or through some sort of weird technological video chat Star Trek device.
Advancement, life-furthering device.
Yeah, man. So, for those that don't know, that Josh was a touring guitar player, now teacher, and shaping the future youth of music of today in the Colorado region. And I don't know.
Quick correction. They won't be youth in the future. Call them present youth, please.
Oh, that's true. That's a George Carlin faux pas that he when he talks about, think of the children or children are our future. Well, by the time the future gets around, they will have already been grown people.
That's
So-
right. It's like, so talk about what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But starting off, like, I don't know, I want to kind of go through, for people that don't know you, your story of how you got into music and then how you ended up touring and then kind of getting to live your dream, and then now you're moved into this role as teacher, which for a lot of touring people, they end up making that transition whether they keep touring or not. They end up teaching, and a lot of people find it more fulfilling. So just starting off, how did you get involved in music? Where did you start playing? What were your influences?
Yeah.
Set the scene, or as Davey likes to say, what's your origin story?
Oh, man, I do love a good origin story, but, like, my origin story doesn't push off quite as strongly because nobody close to me died.
That's fine.
We'll
I
just,
don't
we'll
know,
just
man. I'm
add,
thinking,
we'll
like,
add a dramatic
I'm
death
thinking
in there.
Batman. I'm thinking Spider-Man. I'm thinking Superman, who lost not just his family, but literally everybody.
Maybe much like Thor, you were just born of gods. No one
Yeah,
died there.
I don't know.
No hubris there. Just godliness.
Yeah.
Just immortal.
That's a very positive way of looking at it, and I don't know if I agree with it.
Oh, fair enough.
I started when I was 10. That was when I got my first guitar.
Nice.
It was a homemade acoustic by one of the neighbors in the apartment complex.
Oh,
How
really?
homemade are we talking? Like assembled from parts and not really was a guitar to begin with?
No,
kinda?
we're talking like felt like the guy found some wood
and just built.
knew how to shape it.
Oh wow,
Okay.
that's impressive on its
So
own.
as much as I basically owe everything to that, it was junk. It was bad.
But it's a starting point.
But yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I got the first one that, I got to actually do anything with was from one of those Squire startup packs.
Yep.
So I got that when I was 10.
Legendary.
Yep. And that thing got me through so much of my early practices, all of my lessons when I was younger. And I played it pretty steadily through most of high school.
Right.
that thing held on forever.
Y- Yeah, those things are kind of bulletproof in a way.
Yeah.
Some of those starter packs. Mine not so much, but it was the Epiphone starter pack, and it was an SG with a little amp that was like this big, and then a
Yep.
DVD.
The little 15-watt amp.
Yeah, and I still have it. I never play it, but I'm one of those guys that just hangs on to gear, so I still have it, and those things kind of carry you for a while, for the first few years of your playing.
I was gonna say, I really like this amp setup you have behind you because it's the level amp that sets it all off.
Yeah, well, it's different rigs and stuff. I mean, this was my rig for the longest, and then this is kind of my current rig, either with a 410, which is practical, or whenever I actually do get to use the whole fridge, that's always a blessing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always one of those guys that just holds on to gear when I get it, and I just have a hard time selling anything unless I absolutely am not going to ever use it ever again.
Yeah, I get it. I'm there right now, like looking at my guitars and thinking, you know what I don't have right now is money.
Right. I was gonna say, yeah.
How many guitars you got though?
Enough that I could sell it.
Oh,
But I can't.
oh wow, you're in that mode. I can see it in your eyes, bro.
It
You're thinking about
hurts.
one of these bitches got to go. I can see
It does. I'm getting to that point, and every time I even think about it, I'm like, but I don't want to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just but what if I use it again, or
Yeah.
even not even that? I like it. I don't want to
Well,
get rid of it.
and that's more what it is. I've got a couple that like are beyond my level of repair. Like they need to go into a shop. They need some real care.
Right.
And I know that I'm not going to be doing that anytime in the near future.
Right.
But it's mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, yeah. No, I feel you on that. It's you get this weird attachment for gear that,
Yeah.
it's not just a piece of equipment, it's yours. It's this extension of your
The
playing.
biggest one for me in that kind of regard is I have a BC Rich Mockingbird.
Really?
Yeah. That
I've never seen that.
I think that I've played live under a dozen times,
Yeah.
but it's got a custom paint job. I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks
Eye
rad.
candy. Yeah, it looks good. It looks
Yeah,
nice
if nothing
beside
else,
a
it looks
lava
pretty
lamp,
sitting
I'm
on the
sure.
rack.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man. You gotta, even if it's rad, sometimes you just can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So when you're, playing in the garage and you've got your Squire and you're getting your, stuff together, like what are you listening to? What's your goals? Like where's your mindset on where you want to go in the future?
It was blues. I wanted so badly to be a blues musician.
Nice.
And so much of that was just the music that my parents were listening to, which I then naturally kind of put into my own playlist and stuff. But it was a lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan, a lot of B.B. King, a lot of Clapton, a lot of Zeppelin. Who was I just listening? Oh, I was doing a little, it was like a blues technique lesson with one of my students. He's like, okay, I want to learn about this kind of vibrato. He's like, it's supposed to be different than everyone else's.
Yeah.
I was like, do you mean B.B. King's? The Butterfly? He goes,
Yeah.
yeah. How'd you know about that? I was like, it's because I was exactly your age when I wanted to learn how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And-
it was a lot of blues music that really got me into it. It's easy to listen to, and it's hard enough to play that you can't just jump into it, but it's easy enough that once you get the basics, it's really nice to be able to measure your improvements in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, that stuff resonated with me because I grew up with that too. It was blues, Motown, any of that kind of stuff. Old doo-wop stuff from the 60s, like the Coasters. Coasters are one of my favorite bands of all time. And listening to that stuff, it gets ingrained in your system. And then if you become a musician later, it just, if you really... It's something where if you grow up on it and you have a love for it, it's easier to pick up and you have more of a willingness to like understand it and really
Right.
get the
Yeah,
feel of
absolutely.
it. Yeah. So, and you started playing in bands locally, and I remember those bands because I would go see you guys play, or I would occasionally there would be like booking, show, promotion stuff involved when I was getting into that, and would have, your band. It was called Order 66, and it was kind of a local staple in the
Right.
Antelope Valley high desert rock scene. And so you're, gigging around town and being a known musician in your community, but how did you make that leap to, kind of getting out in the world and, getting to LA and getting hooked up with acidic and things like that?
By getting lucky.
Okay.
In support, it was a lot of this fundamental belief of supporting other local musicians. I always thought it was super, super hypocritical for these guys to ask people to go to their shows. And they're like, we're the first band of the night. We start at 5. No one's ever there to see us, blah, blah, blah. Would you come out? And then those same people wouldn't be going to their friends' shows in the same scenario.
Oh, yeah.
And so I always tried to do my best to get out to a friend's concert if I was free. The way I got hooked up with Acidic, though, was Alien Ant Farm came through. They were out on tour.
Cool.
And it was All Hail the Crimson King, the local band there, that was the opening band for that show.
Yeah.
So otherwise, there's a real good chance if I didn't know them that I would have shown up later into the show's night and not an hour before doors opened. So I had my pre-sale from them. It was my way of supporting them, get to their show in time, and then just enjoy the rest of the evening. But it was All Hail the Crimson King and then Acidic. And they had a really awesome show. One of the most interactive concerts I'd ever seen on like a local level. So, in retrospect, they were a touring band as well. But they were no one I'd ever heard of.
Right.
So to me, they were still openers.
Mm-hmm.
But the crowd interaction was something I resonated with because a huge part of my view on performing is that it's a performance. It's not just about the music. People expect to be engaged and entertained. So I bought one of their CDs. It was, I think, their sophomore album or something. I bought one of their CDs afterward, and they're like, hey, thanks. CDs are basically our gas money. This is how we're getting by. So I made sure to follow up with them on Facebook and Instagram, stuff like that. Like, okay, what's their tour schedule look like? Where are they going? And it was just curiosity, like keeping up with these cool guys.
Yeah.
And one day they posted something on Facebook about parting ways with their guitar player. I was like, I'm going to slide in those DMs real quick.
Right.
Like, hey guys, just so you know, I play guitar. I've been doing it for this long. I'm currently in this band. Is it okay if I come audition? And I heard nothing for a while. And then finally, like, an invitation here. Here's the address. Come on down. We'll put you through a practice or something. And I did that for 3 or 4 months of just going back and forth before they offered me a chance to play one show with them.
Wow.
And the show was at the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. So it was a Halloween show. And I have seen clips from it, and I was bad. Like it was not my best performance. And I mean, I'd only been playing the songs, for X amount of time. And I definitely had like a stage jitters kind of thing because it was my first chance playing with a band that was outside of home. You know what I mean?
Sure. We've all been.
So it just was not a good show. And then as we're taking gear off of the stage to load back into the van, I'm rolling the bass player's cabinet out and it hits like a ditch or something and just falls over. Like, okay, cool. So not only am I not in the band, I'm going to owe this guy money.
Oh, man.
They're going to come after you.
Yeah, it was just not the best time. But they were, at least in my head, they say they liked me. But in my head, worked a little differently. They had a tour coming up, opening for Trapped. They were going to be Trapped's direct support.
Okay.
And I got a phone call like 2 weeks before that tour was supposed to start and said, hey, do you want to try to tour with us?
Wow.
I go, it's going to be about 2 months long. This is the routing. Are you into it? Like, yep. yep, let's go.
Yeah. Wow.
And yes.
So
Yeah.
I think it was more that like they had an opportunity they couldn't pass up and needed someone.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with that. I'm into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes that's your way in the door, and there's no shame in taking anything like that for, musicians that listen to
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's oftentimes, hey, it's the guy that we wanted to get either couldn't make it, he flaked out, something happened, we need somebody else to fill this spot. Can you do it? And then they end up liking what you do, and then that's just how you stay in those gigs.
Right.
And I couldn't imagine being in that position where normally you have that anxiousness of, is this going to be a thing for, a week, 2 weeks, waiting to see if you hear back, after an audition or a couple practices or things. But 3 or 4 months and then that gig is just, it seems like a long drawn out.
Oh, it was really long. The only thing I think that kept me going on it was the fact that they kept wanting me to come back. So
Right.
at the very least, I knew they didn't dislike me.
Right.
But I mean, I even did more than a full tour with them before my name appeared on any credits or anything associated with the band.
Right.
By the time they did the Copperman music video, I was already in the band for a while.
Yeah.
Like officially speaking, but I wasn't in the write-up for the music video, so they just kind of threw me in while we were on set.
Right.
Was that something that was kind of like, was that all out in the open, or was that something where you had to kind of ask as it was happening, like, hey, how are we going to do this? Or
It was definitely something where I asked more early on.
okay,
So at first I really wanted just kind of a yes or no. Are you keeping me around, or should I focus on my original project and going back to school, stuff like that. But it was especially after that first tour, I was like, oh, they genuinely enjoyed the tour experience. I held my own, and there were no problems. So
Right.
it was kind of okay, just wait for the formal letter.
Right. Gotcha. And so, and this is the leap where I noticed that when you start doing stuff like that versus just kind of staying within your town or like within a region kind of a thing. So I guess being local and you're kind of going abroad and meeting people and doing the thing and you're getting thrown into that, not thrown into the world, but you're getting
I was
introduced
just
into
thrown
Just
bodily,
chucked out there.
fucking
some-
hurled
some-
lengthwise or whatever.
it. Sometimes you are thrown into it though. It depends, but it's, you had more of a gentle sort of push, it was a light shove into the pool and not being thrown into the deep end.
I mean, only like right at first, because before Acidic, I got to say that I'd been to 2 states, born in California, and the few family trips out to Nevada to go to Vegas.
Right.
After my first like full year, so we started that trap tour in January. And basically after that one, another one came, and then another one came. And so by the time that year had passed, I went from having 2 states to 55 or to 45.
Wow.
So like it was that first one, and then it was like, nope, we're crossing the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you're going through that, and how old are you when this is happening? I forget exactly when.
So do I. 22.
Okay.
Young
So-
blood.
Yeah. And so and from a realistic perspective, because I think, I don't want to shatter the illusion of what people think touring is like, but I kind of want to, this is something that people don't necessarily get a huge insight on directly. So just for that first run, what's kind of going through your head? What's that experience like? And then because I know for me, even doing the bits of traveling that I've gotten to do, my mindset shifted dramatically from any kind of stuff like that, and the way I look at stuff, and it adds to that experience. So
Sure.
from start to finish of that, like kind of where was your head going into it, during, and then kind of coming out of all that?
I think my biggest shift was on how I viewed music as a career.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, I was exploring very half-heartedly the idea of doing something like music therapy, considering going into teaching, but really music was something I enjoyed doing, not something that I thought I could do for a living.
Sure.
And so when we got on that first tour, the very first show of that tour was in Seattle. And that was its own crazy experience to me. That was the longest I'd ever spent in a car. And so we drove straight up, met up with the other opening band, the other part of the tour package.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I could remember thinking like, oh, this is everybody's job. This isn't just a show. Hey guys, please come watch me Saturday night. Like, this is what these guys do for a living.
Right.
And so we got there early enough that, you get to load everything out, set up what you can inside. And then, especially early with my time with the band, Michael Gossard, the singer, was really, really big on doing his best to meet everybody that showed up to a show before doors open.
Smart.
That once you're inside, you do your best to kind of
Focus
be
on the
personable,
show.
but he would do his best to go outside and be like, hey, nice to meet you. I want to be the first face you see. And
That's smart.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's brilliant on his part.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of picking up on that and like, okay, let's go meet people. Let's talk to people. I let them know that just because they are here to watch this band, they should definitely make sure they're inside while we play, that they're going to have a good time. And so it definitely became a very business-oriented mindset for me really, really quickly because I realized that this was a viable option.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, I think it was the first time we did a House of Blues show was in Houston. And it was a sold-out show. And that was the first time I'd played a sold-out venue that held more than 50 people,
Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
And so that was just like the next step up. Like, oh, people care.
Yeah.
We were, the opening part of the tour package. Half of the flyers for the shows that we would see in various towns didn't have our name on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so when we would do a set and then try to grab all of our gear off stage as quickly as we could for changeover, run back to the merch booth, hoping that like maybe someone wanted a shirt, and suddenly you see a line of people. I was like, not one of these people knows my name. Who are they? Why do they care?
Right.
And so it just kind of got better and better. And the more we got to tour, at least the positive aspects of that, it became a realization that my passion could be my actual job.
Right.
Nice.
So, and at this point, you're still living in the Antelope Valley since this is
Right.
kind of your first introduction to this. And you don't have to like name specific instances if you don't want to, if there were any. But I'm thinking, was there a shift in how people like looked at you or viewed you, or like people's like reaction towards you as you started to do more stuff, or like was it basically just kind of like you come home and it's like, oh hey, Josh is home, and it's like not a big deal? Because I think for everybody in those kind of situations, things could be different.
Yeah. I mean, nobody was ever more grateful for me to be home than my dog. So that was always a nice, reliable welcome. But no, really, I think it was like once people got over the initial, I don't know, shock of kind of thing that they knew someone that was out on tour,
Mm-hmm.
that it probably only lasted a few months before I'd come home from another tour and they're like, oh, cool, you're home. Let's get together while you're back.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was more just like I had moved. And so it was nice to see me when I came back.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, and especially if in 1 year you go from 2 states to 45, that's
Right.
a lot. That's a lot of time. away.
Yeah.
I can't remember it anymore. For a few years, I did this thing where I was actually tracking how many days we were out on the road. And I remember the first year that I joined the band was our busiest as far as just nonstop touring, where we
Right.
toured for almost 10 months out of that year.
Man. And so you're going on like 2 months at a time and then like maybe a month off, or you're
No,
doing
like 2 to 2.5 months at a time, and then a week off.
Damn.
wow. Yeah. And this is jumping ahead a little bit to where you are now, but being now that you're so health conscious and, you know, that you're work out on, you know, not just consistently, but you're a trainer and you've got a very healthy lifestyle and regimen you've built for yourself. Looking back on that, or just knowing like how hard, you know, young bands tour, like to put themselves out there, and like what you guys were doing, like, I don't know, where do you look at all that from a health perspective? Like, do you think that that's maintainable? Do you think there's smart ways to do it?
There's definitely smart ways to do it. The problem is it's not always an option for everybody.
Right.
We were lucky enough to have enough money that like we knew we were never going to starve. You know what I mean? I didn't exactly have a great lunch budget. For the first year of it, I was often budgeting myself like $5 to $8 a day. That was my food budget.
Right.
And there's too much physical labor involved with putting on a good show and driving and promoting and stuff to viably sustain a lifestyle where you're eating one Subway sandwich a day.
Right.
And that was just something I was doing for a long time. Now that I understand the nutritional aspects more, it's easier to think about all the things that I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
But the number one thing I think I could try to tell younger bands to focus on is the food. Like if you don't think that you can comfortably eat for every day that you're gone, that tour's not worth it. That you'll find time to sleep. As much as having a gym schedule is a regular part for me now,
Yeah.
you don't have to exercise daily. You do have to eat.
Yeah.
You'll go crazy out there if you're too hungry.
Yeah.
And every single fight that I can think of within the band was caused either by a lack of sleep or hunger.
Yeah. I could see that. You definitely have time to eat, or I mean sleep rather, because
Right. You can sneak that in whenever you can.
Yeah, because there's drives, and you know, unless you're going just straight into a situation where you have to load into a gig,
Right.
You've got time, but with food, it's either, you know, whatever might be, you know, they might provide you at a venue if they do any of that, which, you know, with the kind of venues that you're playing, it's like, oh, what do musicians eat? Pizza, you know, and it's just like
exactly
which is yeah.
Yep. Pizza and popcorn.
Yeah.
Pizza, popcorn, and 2 drink tickets.
Yeah. One of my guitar tech buddies, Nate Dawson, we were working a gig together, and he goes, oh boy, he goes, you know, there's nothing musicians love more than when a big stack of pizza shows up into a venue and they all line up and they go, oh boy, pizza's here. Just like very sarcastic. And
oh boy.
I started laughing because it was just like, yeah, it's not even like that we don't like pizza. It's just it's that musician food. And I've been on so many calls where it's just pizza or Subway, like you're saying.
Yep.
And it's just,
Subway.
what do crew people eat? Something doughy with meat and cheese on it. Here you go.
They need carbs, right?
Yeah. And, you know, that's all right if you do that once in a while, or, you know, you're in a situation like where you're not on traveling all the time. But if you're doing that every day, you gotta think about how that catches up with you.
It weighs you down. I mean, not just physically, but like it even takes a weird mental toll. I love pizza. It's a genuine love of mine.
Yeah.
But when it is your dinner and then tomorrow morning's breakfast, and then you're hoping there's enough left over so you could have lunch, and that's 4 days a week.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I feel you on that. Or Smash Burger.
Oh, but like if I'm thinking about what food do I hate now that I just can't do, it's Subway.
Yeah. Oh,
Because,
me too.
I mean, aside from, you know, it tasting like Subway, that was my lunch/dinner almost every day for years.
Oh, yeah.
If I was on tour, that was the meal because I knew that I could make it last and it was cheap enough to do it.
Right. And then even if you haven't eaten it that much, you realize that all the ingredients taste the same.
Oh yeah,
Pepperoni,
yeah.
I don't need
Subway could offer me a sponsorship, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, why? It's like you have the cookies, and then you have everything else taste the same. The bread, the meat, the cheese, the vegetables all taste like one, sort of gelatinous concoction that they just throw together.
like
it all tastes like salted
band.
cardboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. But, we were
Which
an
is
opening
really
band.
weird.
And the options were either eat cheap or make sure you have enough gas to get to the next show.
Yeah. Well, and that's the part of it that I was getting at with, starting on this, tangent, I guess, was that, you look at the bills that you're playing and who you're playing with, and you look at the situations that you're in, and you think that, some people have this perception that that's automatically glamorous, when you're doing these opening things. And sometimes it can be, and you're in some situations that are really cool, but it's not like that across the board. And it's definitely not like that when you translate it to your own shows. That's the grueling work part of it, is just dealing with these situations every day. So, yeah, and in that time, like, I don't know, what are some of the other aspects of it that people wouldn't be aware of or wouldn't think of, like, oh, wow, you have to deal with that?
So, like, a big part of my band that I direct for the school is it's an audition-based band. So these are all kids that in some capacity are starting to consider either at least writing, but probably touring. They want to be actively gigging musicians. And so I always have to talk to them like, okay, let's assume that you are offered a tour, but you're not on a label. Nobody's signed you over to anything. You have no money. How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, my mom has a van and we could take turns driving and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, how many days do you think you can go without showering before you lose your mind? And one of them was like, I don't know, like 3? Uh-oh. And I laughed at her. I was like, nope, it's not for you.
The correct answer is 20.
And I was like, hey, let's say you've got a bag for clothes and you can fit 1 week's worth of clothing into that bag. What do you pack?
Yeah.
I'm like, 4 shirts, a jacket, 3 pairs of pants, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, the first thing you said wasn't 10 pairs of underwear, so you're wrong.
Right.
Socks and underwear.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to bring extra underwear if you just don't wear
it. You got me there. but then I'm going to feel the need for extra pants.
Yeah, because I was going to say, you've got your...
I do have a pair of slacks to rotate into that.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, the underwear also act as a sweat barrier.
Yes.
So, I had to explain to them that, like, especially if you're not on some crazy label that's giving you a bus to tour in or something.
Yeah.
There are the aspects of you don't always get to do laundry when you need to do laundry. You don't always get a shower right away. And so you have to be really, really good at making friends. Right. And I think that was part of the realization for me early into touring that I hadn't necessarily thought of, is if we could barely afford gas, we were not going to afford hotel rooms to stay in whenever we were traveling.
No.
So you either slept sitting up in the chair in the van, or you made a friend at the show and hoped that they had extra space on their floor.
Right.
What's your preference, Josh?
I'll take the floor every time.
Yeah. Well, because you can always pack like a memory foam pad or some sort of
something. Normally I would even just like lie my blanket down or something.
Yeah.
But if I'm ever there, and there are pictures of me, I'm sure, but if you see me sleeping sitting up, that means I was just at a breaking point. I was done.
Right. Well, yeah, and I want to stay on this topic for a minute because it's, to me, this stuff is fascinating because there's universal stuff that everybody talks about. Like, I think if anybody even follows independent music touring for any length of time, you'll hear stories about people sleeping in, Walmart parking lots in their van and things like that, which
Yep.
I'm sure, you guys did plenty of
Yeah, of
doing
course.
things like that. So, but then there's all these other little tricks and tips about, food and what to pack and things like this. And it's a whole universe of information that doesn't occur to you until you get put in these situations
Right,
to think of.
until you're the one that has to do it.
Yeah. And I don't know. To me, that kind of resourcefulness you can apply to like so many aspects of life once you've kind of learned those skill sets, and just doing more with less and thinking you need a big grand thing to get things done. It's like, no, you can drop me into this situation and I'll be fine.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one for me was learning how to make friends in various settings and learning how to do it very, very quickly.
Right.
That you couldn't fake it, you couldn't half-ass it with people, because they would immediately, like without fail, think it was a sales pitch or something. If you're like, here, get to know me, I'm in a band. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what is it that you want?
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you approach them as a friend and genuinely make people feel welcome, it's a belief of mine that most people genuinely want to be good and want to help other people. Right. So if you make that kind of initial connection, there were a ton of times where people were like, oh, where are you guys going tonight? Are you hitting the road right away? And we go, no, we're probably just going to go find a place to park the van and sleep out there before we head out in the morning.
Yeah.
And we go, oh, well, I've got 2 couches back home and some space on the floor.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, huge part of it. And so the weird one of my first jobs when I moved to Colorado was at a place called My Gym. It was like an athletic center geared towards kids.
Cool.
But I had to do a personality test as part of my application.
Whoa,
Okay.
what? Like
Yeah,
a psychological one?
Yeah.
Fun.
And I'm, terrible at this, so I can't remember what it was called, but it was the super legit one that cost the company way too much money to run it on me.
Right.
Yeah.
But my score, whatever that combination of letters was the reason I got the job, because it happened to be the exact same one as the GM there. And they were saying it's a really rare score to get, because basically what it said was 50% of my personality is who I genuinely am as a person. 50% of my personality is the ability to adapt to whatever situation I'm in. So the whole thing was, part of the reason I fit in with various social circles isn't necessarily that I'm faking that kind of attitude. It's just that I understand those kind of people. And so I relate to them very easily.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely a skill set too you're going to apply to everybody you meet that's in the music world, not just, people who are outside of that are trying to, meet people who are into the band, but like it's people that you meet on the road, musicians within the bands that you're touring with, bands that are opening for you,
right.
crew people, things like that. It's all, that skill is just applies to everything really.
Yeah. And especially because of the kinds of shows that we were doing, the other bands we would meet on these tour packages would come from different cities, play different styles. And so it was really important to be able to both differentiate what was going on there and see what the comparables were. That way I could learn from whatever I did last time to make the next one easier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and at this point, you guys are getting more established and you're getting more attention and you're getting on bigger tours and you're doing stuff like Warped Tour. And as the band is going along and you're a part of this and, you're still grinding it out through all of that, like you said, you do hit moments where you have like a breaking point, even, you're doing what you love and you're out there for whatever reason. What are some moments that stick out in your mind that like got you through those, or some stories that kind of things that happened to you where like it lifted you up even if enough to just kind of keep you going to the next place or city or whatever?
So when Max, the new bassist, joined, I've blocked the show mostly out of my memory because it was that bad kind of thing. But we were
Right.
out on tour, and we were told that the show is like promoted to hell, and there was going to be a crowd, and everything was going to be great. There were 2 people inside this giant empty bar, and the bartender, and that was it.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And so we were thinking, like, we were going on to, and we were like, are doors open? Wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And we got up and played like one song or something, and the 2 guys that were at the bar left.
Oh no.
And yeah, so it's just a bartender standing behind an empty bar. But meanwhile, you know, we were booked to do a show, and so it
Yeah.
was, we have to fill up this time slot. And the whole time on stage, I was thinking, like, I should have stayed in school, huh? I should have kept that office job. That one really, really hurt. There was a different one where the venue had chairs, a bunch of chairs, just spread throughout the club, and not one person
that.
ever decided to get out of their chair when we started playing. And I couldn't tell you what the issue going into that show was, but our drummer lost it. He full break, he got up from the drum kit to yell at the crowd
Huh.
to tell them how cool they were for sitting down at a rock show that they spent their money on,
Oh.
even though they're all working minimum wage jobs anyway.
Oh, bad move.
Yeah, so he really went off the deep end, and ended up getting his beer roofied.
Wait,
Which,
Whoa.
yeah, whoa, wait, because it gets so much worse.
we took a left turn.
Good.
But
Now I'm
continue.
Yeah,
interested.
so-
What's happening? Okay.
So he got pissed at the crowd. We finished our set. By total chance, our tour manager and drummer were drinking the same kind of beer. And we can only assume it was a mistake. The tour manager ended up being the one that had his beer roofied. And so we were freaking out, because this is the guy that would, on any given night, put a 6-pack down like it didn't exist.
Right.
And suddenly he had 2 beers in the night and was falling down trying to walk out of the venue.
Oof.
And we're like, oh, Jesus, what happened? And so it took us about a day to piece it together. But we're like, oh, you can't yell at the audience, dude.
No. And that's not justifiable behavior by any means, but it's also, yeah, I agree with you on that. It's like that could have manifested in any number of ways.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first time where it was like, it wasn't just a sad show. It was, oh, there are bad people.
Yeah, as much as you can go out and tour and you meet like the coolest, nicest people and you have great experiences, there's plenty of stories like that too, and you need to keep your wits about you. You can't just assume everybody's cool because they're just at the show. That's definitely not the case.
And that was a huge show for me. Another one of those ones where I was like, am I making the right life decisions here? Should I really be pursuing this if these are the places I'm playing?
Yeah.
But I think the first one where I was like really amazed at the kind of recognition we were starting to get was in Joplin, Missouri. There was a venue out there on our very first headlining tour. And we found out early that day that the show was sold out. And it's not a huge venue, it's a few hundred, but that was our biggest sold out show. And so we're like, wow, that's awesome. It's Joplin. It's nowhere near us. So that means that these people cared. The last time we came in, they had a good time at the concert. They told their friends. Word was spreading. And so we get to the venue a few hours before doors, and there's already like 100 people in line. And we're like, oh,
Cool.
this is it. This is why I do this gig. I get it.
Yeah.
And so you just, for every bad show or something that I can remember having, there's way more of those kind. Where like I remember people being excited before doors open. There were a few times where like I would go out to lunch before a show or something, and someone would recognize me. Like, oh, this is it, huh?
Yeah.
This is what a rock star feels like.
Yeah, right.
As I'm in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Yeah, right. That's cool. I mean, that's super cool. The one that comes to mind that I've heard just from us being friends, but I wanted you to tell it on here was the '96 story from Vegas. I always think of that as like, yeah, that's a really cool story.
We were in Vegas for a rock radio award show thing. So it was a whole bunch of nationally syndicated as well as local rock radio DJs and stuff that were up for various rewards and or awards, but so we were there and we were booked to play like a little side party thing at the Hard Rock in Vegas. But during this multi-day conference that was going on, there was a venue down the street that was having other bands that were invited to play there.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to play on the second night. I went out the first night because one of the bands that we met on tour was playing. I was like, okay, I'll go check them out. I've got no money to be in Vegas. I don't need to be spending stuff out here. So I went to go to the show, and Nikki Sixx was there, just hanging out in his own little private booth. And I didn't see him at first, but it was just a few months before that his show had picked up Copperman as a single. I have no idea how he came across it. And we only even found out about it because he sent us a tweet. He was like, hey, Copperman's my pick of the week. This track fucking rocks. You guys are great. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we were like, thank you so much. You are a shiny golden god.
Yeah, like that's cool.
Nice.
So I went out to this show, and as I'm in line at the bar to get a drink, from over in his booth, he goes, hey, you're Josh, right? Who's saying that?
Yeah.
And so it was him. He's like, you're Josh from Acidic, the guitar player. I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he goes, you want a beer? So I got to sit down and have a drink with someone that had, in my mind, no business knowing my name.
Right.
But I mean, probably no business knowing my band, let alone being able to pick me out of a crowd.
Yeah. What did I don't know if I've ever asked you this. What did you guys talk about? Like, was it just kind of?
It was basically me thanking him.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like, thanks for the drink. Thanks so much for picking up our single.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. You're awesome.
Yeah.
And he asked me why I was there, and I was like, oh, I know these guys playing tonight.
Yeah. That's cool. And it's something I'm sure that like him coming up, it's one of those trying to pass something along that, he either wish he would have gotten or, received that same treatment. So it's sort of a pay it forward kind of a thing, which is pretty rad.
I like to think it's like one of those cats who he's still that passionate about music. Like a new band to him is like the next thing he wants to fuck with. So he's like, yeah, I know Josh from Acidic because I like that new shit. So I feel like that might be a factor with a cat like that. When people are really into music, doesn't matter, like, your level coming into it may not matter to him as much because that's how they came up. It was a battle on the strip.
Yeah,
those guys.
especially on the strip.
Yeah.
Go
watch The Dirt.
Super cool. I still haven't done it.
Really? Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I need to as well. I haven't seen it yet.
Cocaine.
Well, I'm
it sounds
sure.
about right.
There's lots of
I didn't watch all of it, but it was fun.
There's lots of making sure you get all your calcium and going to bed at 8:30 and getting up early to hit the gym. There's a lot of that going on in there.
Yeah, it's right up my alley.
Yeah. And so, so talking about the touring stuff, like now you've transitioned into you're basically, a full-time teacher and you're teaching out at School of Rock in Colorado. Aurora, right? That's specifically where you're at? Aurora. Yeah. And so can you talk about sort of the transition you made from going from the touring life to now being at home and being a teacher, and what that's done for you, and kind of how your mindset has shifted from then to now. Because
Yeah. So the first thing is my mindset has only shifted so much as that, like, I genuinely enjoy my job. But should the opportunity ever present itself where they're like, hey, here's X amount of money, we need you guys out on the road for 6 months, can you do it? I would be gone tomorrow.
right,
Yep, sure can. Let's go.
yeah, absolutely.
But as for the job itself, I got into the job originally because I was working at the Coors distributing warehouse.
Woo!
And I hated it. It was the worst job I've ever had. I was working anywhere from 10 to 16 hours a day. And it was my job to lift cakes. You know what I mean? Like, it was back-breaking labor for way too low of pay. And so School of Rock came in because of a wedding. My girlfriend's best friend was getting married. And
I saw that movie.
I've seen that. She was getting married, and two of the musicians that were in the band performing at that wedding, I got to know the singer for that band was the bride's cousin. And so she and the guitar player there were teachers at School of Rock.
Wow.
So I met them that way, and just kind of, got to stay enough in contact that when it finally did come time for me to get a new job, I think it was the bride from the wedding that was like, hey, they need a guitar teacher. I was like, yeah, cool. I don't care what the pay is. I don't care what the hours are. Get me out of here.
I'm volunteering. Sounds great.
Yeah. Volunteers tribute. Oh, what? They're 6-year-olds? Fine. Let's go.
Cool.
So I find out about the school and I do some research about what School of Rock is outside of a movie. And a big part of their curriculum is built around this idea that the best way for kids to learn not just their instrument, but musicianship is to be in a band. And so they would take these private instructors and say, here, this band is studying this kind of music, guide them through it. And then there was the next step up, which was an audition-based band, but that one didn't have a director.
Gotcha.
Like, okay, what's involved with this band that's different about the others? And a big part of it was booking shows. That the other kids play one show every 4 or 5 months. So they're given that long to learn a full set's worth of music. Then the school books them a show and they go and perform. House band was like, okay, kids, you've got 2 months. Here's 30 songs to learn. You've got 10 shows coming up. And so that was the big difference between those ones, was the house band was much more about not just building those musicianship skills, but actually learning what it's like to be an active, working, gigging musician. And so much of that for me was like, I just finished doing this.
Sure.
So all of the stuff that I missed about touring, if I couldn't do it myself, I could at least teach them what it was going to be like and help them get ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's cool because, especially for those kids that, just like you were, there's that wondering if this is a viable option, or, wanting to do it, but not necessarily having a realistic idea of what, how, like, what's behind the curtain, like how things actually operate. And so you have that knowledge, and getting to share that with them is just a huge, it's just a huge step forward for them that they may or may not get otherwise, if they really want to do the band thing.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the cooler parts about the school to me is the staff itself. The people that they get to teach there are insanely proficient, brilliant musicians. Joining in, and like, as I got to really get to know the other teachers and stuff more, I always thought of myself as not necessarily a great musician, but proficient. Like I know my stuff.
Yeah.
I know what I can do and what I have to do to get better. And then I showed up and I was watching these other guitar players. I'm like, I'm the worst guitarist here.
Yeah.
And so all of these other teachers have touring experience, recording experience, studio time. They all have these famous contacts that they can call up if we need something. And so they're not necessarily best friends, but like I was running a summer camp based around punk music. And
Nice.
the drummers, one of the kids that was drumming, his dad was like, "Hey, you know the Dickies, right? Because they're buddies of mine. We could give them a call." I was like, Are you kidding me?" um, what was the other one that we did that to? I think it was Black Flag, where someone just happened to have a connection.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, I did a different one where I got to call up the guys from Hinder.
Yeah. And
And so everybody at the school though has somebody like that where they're like, "Oh, you think that we're just school teachers? Here, let me introduce you to my friend Dave Grohl."
right. And then
Whoa.
yeah, and then you like blow some kid's mind that's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
really? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
The funniest one I did a pop punk and like ska hybrid class thing before.
Yeah. Well, that's right
And
up your alley.
yeah, exactly. I felt very at home.
Yeah.
But one of the kids, my Warped Tour's been out of commission for a few years now. But I brought up Warped Tour in my brief stint on it, and one of the girls was like, "Whoa, what? Like, back up? What did you say?" And so I explained it to him, and I was like, "Yeah, one of my favorite parts was I met the guys from Bowling for Soup, and they invited me to go hang out and have a beer and play with their dog." And she thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
as she-
suddenly I'm not just the guitar teacher, huh?"
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I think it doesn't matter if you have those connections or not. You know, it's anybody who's coming up in music kind of looks at any music teacher they connect with that way. I was the same way with my
Yeah,
music
absolutely.
teachers. And for you, it's just the added bonus of that you have all of that touring experience that you can share with them. So it just gives us this another level
Right.
of mentorship.
And I think that's the main thing that kind of sets the school itself apart from just, someone finding a private instructor off Craigslist.
Right.
Is the actual quality of instructor can be dead even. You might find a better instructor off Craigslist. But the school itself kind of provides this atmosphere where the whole idea behind it is, hey, here's a bunch of people who are kind of in this like mindset, who all understand why you're here and why you're doing this and can help you do it.
Right. And I think that's great. And I would be remiss if I did not ask the fellow music teacher, my co-host Davey Sipes, if he had any questions for another fellow music teacher, as that's a little bit out of my forte, and I'm still consider myself a student in certain ways, and definitely delivering information and teaching young people is not my thing. So
It's
I
not
was
my thing
curious.
either.
I don't know about that, man. You're good at what you do. I'm as he knows, there's too many awkward pauses and stuttering, and you know what I mean, for me to be, like getting my points out to try to teach, people what arpeggios are and things like that.
Yeah, your arpeggios comment. I had a student yesterday. She's still pretty new, a few months in, but she brings me music from time to time that are like part of the soundtrack to an anime that no one's ever heard of. She's like, "Here, you hear the song? I really want to learn how to play that."
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay. The one thing I know I am worst at, especially as a teacher, is playing by ear. I am not good at playing by ear. It's something I am actively practicing because I have students ask me to do it. But she brought me this piece of music, and as I was figuring it out, like, oh, I am getting better at this. But
Right.
it was a lot of finger picking stuff. And it took her a couple months before she realized that everything she was finger picking was just arpeggiating chords. She was so focused on what her right hand was doing that she didn't realize she was grabbing chord shapes with her left.
Yeah.
Oh, so it magically came together.
Yeah, and so there are times where I'm like, how did you not get that? That was the first thing we went over. But there's also the little grateful part where you just go, I'm glad the light bulb clicked for you. I'm glad you get it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you find those moments like really rewarding for you as a teacher, just knowing that you're kind of delivering this information and it's something where you're in the same way that you had that light bulb, turned on for you, whether it's learning blues vibrato or
Mm-hmm.
learning, a Zeppelin song or learning different techniques, you kind of come full circle in that, you're helping these kids and inspiring them to pursue their dreams like you were able to do.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I mean, what that moment is where, you're happy for the student changes from student to student. But there's always something that happens where you're like, that's it. That thing in their eyes right there. It's like, oh, that's why people teach. I get it.
Yeah.
So I have one kid who's 14, I think maybe 15, and we were going over we were starting an introduction to diatonic harmony, and as soon as I presented it as a category, you could just see him melt. He was like, "What is that? I don't know those words."
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, he had a textbook understanding of it. It was perfect. And I remember quizzing him as we were going, and he didn't even have to think about it. He was just popping everything out. I was like, that's that one. But I also have an 8-year-old who came to me with a brand new guitar, took it out of the case at the school.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, okay, what kind of music do you like? And I think he was trying to basically allude to metal. He couldn't name bands, but he wanted fast music, loud music, and I can't remember exactly. He was describing heavy distortion, basically.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you want to see something cool? And I popped on the overdrive on his amp and just put the gain to 10, and it immediately fed back. And he thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I was like, there it is. That's it. All he wanted was some feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. And dude, there's so many of those moments that we all grew up with that we can look back to that we've never forgotten. And then just thinking about that in that moment of oh, wow, that was the first time that's ever happened for that kid that he's done.
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah, the
crazy.
thing that pisses me off during my rehearsals was the thing that inspired him to start practicing.
Right.
That's funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's instant Angus Young. That's instant, punk rock. It's just instant whatever you want to call it. And
it was really cool for me because, if Angus is who your brain immediately goes to, then sure, it makes sense and you make that connection.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this kid could have named a band if I'd given him 10 minutes to think about it. There was just something about it where he was like, oh, I know what that feels like.
Yeah. Well, and that actually brings up an interesting question for me because I've talked to people who've gone on to university and music school about this, but not necessarily people who are teaching younger kids. And Davey, I guess this would be a question for you too. Do you feel that now that we're living in this age where streaming is sort of universally accessible and there's YouTube, and even more than 5 years ago, there's so much music at your fingertips and information. Do you feel that that's expanding people's minds or kids' minds, or do you think that it's kind of making people be more in a bubble? Is it a mix of both?
Well, I mean,
As far
the technology is just equipment. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with what drives you. I
right,
mean, so it's a facilitator we didn't grow up with. We had to take extra steps. I'm a little older than you fine young handsome gents,
And I was of the era where it was like you would fuck with a cassette to slow it down to like, and then realize that you had to tune down the guitar a little bit after the fact because it wasn't a true pitch. It didn't really actually drop the pitch. It actually
Right.
affected the pitch. So, going through all that and then, growing up and being into the same things Josh mentioned, Clapton and Hendrix was a huge factor for me. Reading the shit that they had to go through to learn how to play an instrument was a huge motivator for me. I was like, because I'm a lefty, see. We're spurned by God. We have horns underneath the hair, and they don't make guitars for us. And so,
Right.
I was always, I never felt like an outsider in music because of that, but I always knew that I had to just like, there is no excuse because I started playing so early, I really didn't think to contrive an excuse for why I couldn't play. First guitar I got was a really busted one, and then I started playing it, and I realized that everything was upside down, so I flipped it upside down, so the strings were reversed, but it started to sound better. So that, you just do what you have to do. So long story long, I think that today, a kid with a certain temperament, with a certain mentality, can definitely step up and be the next whatever. I don't want to say specific nationality, but there's like this Asian American boy I seen playing bass, and he rips Jocko like I could barely play. So,
Right.
I mean, motherfucker's like 10. So get that. You know what I'm saying? I was like, that's what's made possible by the internet, I think. In general, it's more like the Tower of Babel than ever before. It just confuses people. Like those ads. Have you ever tried to learn guitar, but you're frustrated because you spent hours working notches? Listen, first of all, if you had something to say, you would have fucking said it by now, Jack. You're 30 seconds into the ad. And those things
Right.
make me mad because they specifically speak around the points of what really matters, which is like, look, he says, you don't have to
Right.
play for hours a day. I was like, there's a certain quantity of time where if you want to get good, which is subjective anyway, but if you want to get good, you're going to have to play for hours a day. And I tell that to every one of my fucking kids. I was like, I don't expect you to play for hours a day, but here's what I do. And I play for them in every lesson. I'm like, here's what I'm working on now. I was like, it's coming along. And then I show them the progress. So that's a big thing for me, is that I instill in them by showing them what I do. And I was like, and here's why. I'm doing this classical thing because I got to do my recital for my degree. I'm doing this bass gig because I play in a funk band. And I show them this, and they're like, oh. And so that's in the same way you give them that experience of your knowledge from touring with the band. That's what I think that's what they need to come get. And without that, the technology does nothing. You're flailing.
Sure.
You're just, you're adrift.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was like. I constantly show my students stuff that I'm working on. My embarrassing one, for lack of a better phrase, recently was trying to learn Cliffs of Dover.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you
And
hate
so-
when they make you learn Cliffs of Dover and shit? Oh
So
my god!
I was showing one of my students like the day after I picked
now
it
I
up. I was
ripped
like,
that
okay,
shit. But God, oh.
this is what I've got. It's not good.
Right.
And then, like a month later, it's like, okay, you want to hear it now?
Oh, excuse me.
And I played about 30 seconds of it or something, but I hit it note for note.
There you go.
And they only cared about certain aspects of it. It was more just, I think, that personal touch that you don't get from a YouTube lesson. That, sure, I could teach you the same things, but you're not going to get to ask that person a question.
Right.
You don't get, or if they're routinely missing a part, the video can't show them, hey, pop your knuckle up a little bit more. You're muting that string a little bit. That's all that's happening.
Pop that knuckle.
Slide down, fix your wrist. You know what I mean? There's just certain parts, I think, about actually taking lessons in person that you don't get from the internet.
On that note, are you doing
Yeah.
them via Zoom right now for the school, or what's your status over there at the?
It's both.
Oh,
So the school is open, but the video lessons are an option for people that don't want to go.
how fun! We don't have options here.
So our
Not that you could get me to go out in public anyway.
super lucky that we have the availability and accommodations that we do.
Hell yeah.
But like to give you an idea, the private lesson rooms themselves, everybody in or out of that school is wearing a mask. And then the chairs are set up about 6 feet apart. And then we've got a clear shower curtain between us.
Mm.
So if anybody gets sick in that school, we have to assume that it was from the outside and got brought in somehow.
I thought
You
you
know
were
what I
going to say
mean?
they were rubbing on the shower curtain. But
Something.
both would be true. Both could be true.
So and that's just for the one-on-ones. When we do the group rehearsals, it's depending on where you're at, there may or may not be the curtains. Like singers are always separated by a curtain or by a wall. But then we actually measured out and taped down like markers on the floor saying, here, you have to stand here, you stand here, you stand here. You've got about this much wiggle room to be able to, have fun on stage. But other than that, this is what we need to do to abide by the rules and keep this place open.
Yeah. Well,
That's cool.
And that's kind of unexpected training on its own, because how many times do you get crammed into a corner and like just, you try to fit.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you try to fit 10 pounds of band into a 5-pound bag, and then you're going, how do I move? How do I put on a show? You can do it. You can stand completely stationary and still be engaging and captivating to an audience. And this is good practice for that. Like,
Yeah,
hey, make me. Yeah.
It's weird. It was a part of when I took the house band director job. I was doing it because like my favorite part of the job is not teaching. It's helping them get used to playing on stage. It's the band aspect of it. And then a few months after I took it is when we started to see everything shut down. And that's when bands had to start doing the video, the live stream shows and stuff like that. I was like, I have no idea how to do any of this. This is all brand new to me. Mm-hmm. And so now we're just really, really fortunate that we have some indoor and outdoor dining spots. There are venues that are allowing people in. But it's such a different world when I think about, playing at the Viper Room versus having to make sure that I find a venue that can have 50 people in there and still obey like the 6 feet table rules, only 6 people to a table. How big of a space do we need?
Yeah.
And so the whole concept of booking shows is really, really different now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that is the tricky part, especially because, student ensembles is just a bigger setup and more people, and it's more logistics than just trying to set up for a normal band with everything going on.
My band right now, for example, there's 12 kids in that band.
Right.
So assuming that they each wanted to bring a parent, we're already talking 24 from the school and then 25, 26, 27, including bare minimum staff. And so we need a venue that can comfortably house 100 people just to have the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
That's some crazy shit. So, but throughout the pandemic, you guys have still been managing with this effort you're describing to put on the usual shows and rehearsals and stuff like that so far?
Yeah, we had to close down a little bit. It was like 2 months, I think.
Okay.
And then when we finally were up and running back at the school again, it's just been, the hardest part has been the shows, because the whole school curriculum is built around that idea of getting kids to play, not just the private lessons.
Right.
And so the first show that we did was an outdoor one where we were like, as people were showing up, okay, this is where we need you to stay. This is how far we need parents to stay back, blah, blah, blah. Your kid is going on at this time. This is their set length. You can't show up X amount of time before, and you have to leave by X amount of time after. And so it's keeping everything like on a super tight ship that way. But we are finding more and more. My favorite one right now that I'm looking forward to, there's a venue in Denver called The Oriental, because it's a super original venue name. But it's a really rad venue.
That club's going to get canceled. Careful, Denver.
It's a really, really
Gotta
cool
update
venue.
your
but
shit before Twitter gets you.
They were nice enough to let the school rent it out for a day.
That's
and
cool.
So we're doing this thing where like there's 2 101 bands, so those are the kids, those are 6 to 10 year olds. So there's 2 of those groups, and then like a little intermediate group, and then the full performance groups. And so we're basically going to be at that venue from about 9 to 9, just making sure everybody gets in and out safely, setting everything up and breaking it down.
That sounds
So
like the shows I produced with music schools. Yeah.
I was about to say, it's a different gig than I'm used to in my own band, but
Yeah.
my very brief interactions with student bands and stuff before, it's about what I expected.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh, I
I'm
wanna
really
ask you a
looking forward to it.
question,
It's
though.
an awesome venue.
I want to ask a goddamn question, Josh.
Ask your question.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So I want to ask you about because so much of the focus at the school is the idea of live performance and stagecraft. So, in order to ask this question, which is insightful, I'm going to have to say something that's going to make me sound like a dick again, which is that people like you and me are born with something innate. The ability to use kinetic energy in front of other people. I know you don't plan out what you do, but I've watched a couple clips of you playing live to be like, yeah, I fuck with that guy because he's like me when it comes to playing live. A lot of people I really love that I will always fucking play with and always jam with, and they're like my family. But when I pick them, if I gotta do a live gig, I was like, if it's my original music, I wouldn't, because I need something that feels a certain way, and just certain people aren't programmed that way. Now my question is, do you find that to be the case, or do you have like some sort of process to where you can help people realize this?
I definitely have at least some process of making people realize how important their stage presence is.
Cool.
But there's also definitely just a certain element of some people do it more than others, whether they mean to or not. One of the exercises I like to do, especially with my younger kids who are going into like their first concert or something, is there's a giant stage in the school that has a recording room on the other side. And so the glass is dark enough that they could see their reflections. And so what I'll have them do, especially now that it's like their show is on the 30th, so they're running their sets and getting ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, guys, today we're going to practice in this room, and I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. There is no crowd. You have to be aware of how you look on stage.
Yep.
And for a lot of them, realizing that they look scared in a corner is enough for them to either come out and try to do something, or they just totally turn down. And then I get to address them about that, like, what's so scary? What is holding you back here?
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of them, it's just kind of being aware of what they look like on stage.
Now, see, that's brilliant, and it sounds like a simple procedure, but that's an insight. So I'm like, have you always worked with kids? Because that's something that a lot of teachers don't think to. A lot of teachers are not engaging to figure out what's the process behind the reticence. You're actually offering emotional support in that instance. I'm wondering, like, did you have some sort of mentor, or are you just good with kids? You got siblings? What's your story?
Yeah, I've got siblings, but like that's definitely not where that positive nurturing aspect came from.
Fuck you, siblings.
So
we tolerate them. I know. I love my
the majority of my teaching experience has been with kids. I've had adult students, but 99% of them have been kids. And the mirror idea I actually got from my dad, who would want me to do tricks on staging and stuff. He's like, he would show me old music videos, and he's like, look at this move. It's like he's shooting a machine gun. He would like bounce a guitar around. It's like, you should go practice in front of a mirror. Be aware of what you look like. Be engaging and be fun on stage.
Yeah.
And so the more and more I adapted that, the more I realized how important it was to me. Like I said, I am, technically speaking, the worst guitar player at that school, at least amongst the teachers, because I play and teach with, Berkeley jazz professors.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, I was in a pop rock band once. And so
but they're both valid.
Yeah, I kind of try to bring it up to my students that, like, okay, guys, if I can honestly admit that I'm not the best guitar player here, why did I have so much success? And luck is a huge part of it, and I'll never deny that. But a huge part of it was I was engaging on stage. People remembered our shows.
Right.
I was lucky enough to be in a band with other musicians that shared that kind of mindset. But it was the idea that you don't have to be the technically best player up there. Your average concert goer doesn't care.
It's
Right.
not a
They are
factor.
there.
Not like you would think.
Exactly. They are there because they want to have fun. So as long
Yeah.
as you are fun, they will remember you. And so that's definitely something I try to kind of push on to the kids is, all right, let's assume that you play guitar your whole life. What are the chances you're going to be the best guitar player in the world? Cool. Better learn how to put the guitar behind your head.
Yeah. Right. Well, and also too, it's the other stuff that we were talking about leading into this about, making friends, treating people well, having a memorable show, showing up on time. These are all factors that determine these things. And being the most technically proficient person doesn't play into that. And there's different gigs for everybody. The gig
Yeah,
that
of
you
course.
got, they needed a guitar player like you for that gig. If you're auditioning to be in Dweezil Zappa's band, then it's like, yeah, you should probably take lessons with the Berkeley jazz professor.
Yeah,
guy.
exactly.
Yeah, because it's going to be more challenging, technically proficient music. But that's the great thing about it is there's different avenues for everybody. You don't have to be, you don't have to try to be the next best guitar player in the world or like reinvent the instrument every time. You just have
Right.
to,
And I really like that aspect of it as a teacher, because I am not a blues teacher and I'm not like a punk rock teacher. One of my more important parts of the job is students come to me and I have to ask, like, hey, what is it that you want from this? Do you just want to learn how to play your favorite songs, or are you interested in songwriting?
Mm-hmm.
I've got students that want to learn about R&B, but I have other students that are like, nope, My Chemical Romance or die.
right.
And so I have to be able to familiarize myself with everything in between. And, that's its own kind of fun challenge to the job, is where do I fit in and how do I convince these kids that I am enough involved in that area of interest of theirs that they should listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an interesting insight into your approach, like your perspective on it.
That was a big one for me. I remember when I was burning through guitar teachers when I was younger, is
You
kind of
burned
questioning.
through them, huh?
I had more than a few.
What happened there? Was it just like you were looking for something different, or were they flaky, or
No, there were a few. There were some that like left wherever I was taking lessons from. The first one that I could remember really liking, apparently just wasn't comfortable teaching me past a certain point because he didn't feel he was a good enough teacher.
classic
And there were some that I just, didn't like as much. But a big part of it for me was it's a personal connection kind of thing. As a musician, that sure, I believe you are better than me, but who are you that I should care? Like, there's a million people better than me, but it doesn't mean I want to work with them.
Right.
And so I just automatically assume to all of my new students that they share that mindset, that they know I'm more than twice their age and I have that experience and that I'm better, but why should they care?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and then what do you think the response ought to be in that case? What is the optimum response to that rhetorical question?
Really, I think it's just about making a connection.
Okay.
It's not necessarily seeking their approval so much as it is, here, I understand why you're here. Let's work on that.
Word.
Because I just get like this fear of every 10-year-old that was ever told to learn piano and didn't want to learn piano.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a Mike
Are you-
Johnston quote. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, are you teaching the other instruments that you play through the store too? Like, or is it mostly guitar?
Just ukulele. I've got a couple of ukulele students.
Isn't that the weirdest goddamn thing? I'm so sick of the goddamn ukulele. I mean,
It's
I don't. It's a humble brag. I fucking throw down on the ukulele, but it's boring to play, and no one wants to hear it. No one cares about my chord melody renditions of Tears for Fears. I don't. I'm like,
exactly.
nobody fucking cares. Why are these kids?
I
It's
do it
impressing the children.
99% of the time because I'm sitting on the couch at home for too long and I see
There
the
you
case
go.
over in the corner. I should play that.
That's good, man. Yeah, hell yeah. And it's like
But-
one thing's for sure, with that string displacement shit, it always gets your brain working because you're like, this isn't a regular C chord and all that. So
Yeah,
and that's why I have
picked
the kids
up a
pick it up.
banjo for the first time yesterday.
Oh fuck
And
that.
One of the other employees brought it in because she wanted to start learning. And I sat there for like 10 minutes before I figured out how to play a single line. I was like, how is this strung? And she didn't know. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's been
Yeah.
the toughest string instrument I ever have messed with, hands down.
How is it strung? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's an open G chord, and it's also displaced because the string closest to you is a high G. So it's ding, 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 ding,
Mhm.
ding. Adjusted for pitch.
I could not adjust it for pitch. I could not figure it out for the life of me.
Yeah,
Like I
throwing
said,
the-
not good at playing by ear.
well, you know
Yeah,
what?
well-
Because it's like the problem is that if you bring it in and it's like if it's all been tuned like somebody did know how to do it, it's so hard to get it together to like find the actual notes. Because it's specific, classes of pitch. It's like B2 and G3 and all that
Right.
bullshit. And somebody brought it in and tuned it to guitar tuning, and I was like, dot 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 dot.
No.
How did this not
Dot,
break? The tension on the shit was like unbelievable. You could see how it just wanted to like bend into itself.
Yeah.
Poor guy thing.
Yeah, I had no idea but the guy that actually ended up tuning it up for the girl, talking about like teaching other instruments that we can't play. There are multiple teachers there
Yeah,
that teach multiple instruments.
jerks.
My favorite one is always the emergency bass teacher situation, where like if a bass teacher calls out for a lesson, guess who's doing it? Any one of the guitar teachers.
Yeah.
But there are a few teachers there that are like vocals and keys or bass and drums.
Uh-huh.
But the guy that did the banjo for her, I knew him as predominantly a key player. But then a couple harmonica players showed up to school, and he was doing harmonica lessons because of course he could. And then a trombone was donated to the school, so I picked it up because I figured I'd try out a different instrument.
Attaboy.
And he goes, "Hey, if you ever need any lessons, just let me know."
This motherfucker.
I was like, "You kidding me?"
You got the trombone too?
I walked in on him during a rehearsal one time, filling in on drums. I was just like, "There's at this point, there's nothing that I'm just going to assume he can't." Oh, I found out he plays accordion.
Oh, wow. That's another
So,
one I've always lusted for.
At this point, I'm just thinking like, if he told me that he could play this random instrument from a country I've never heard of,
Right.
I'd go, yeah, sure. I believe it."
Bouzouki.
Yeah.
Contrabass saxophone? Got it, bro. That shit is
You
like
never
a
know,
story
you-
and a half tall, man.
Yeah. You never know. Someone might need you for the gig, and if you get the call,
Yeah, exactly.
you have to answer it.
He is the most employable musician I know.
Right? I mean, there's definitely something to that, and it's, it's like I think it's good for us like musicians as we continue our quest and develop and stuff. It's like you need new outlets and just new things to kind of like, reinvigorate your point of view. That's a lot of why like I branched out into like other instruments and keep doing it. I like to try to get a little proficiency before I go on, but the main idea is that it's mostly just to, cleanse the palate. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I had one question, and actually you just brought up growth and development. This kind of leads into that. Doing some research, I mean, obviously we've known each other for a while and, a long time, so I knew a lot about you going into it, but just as a refresher, I'm like, let me just scroll through like, old band Instagram and your Instagram and just like, let me just like, kind of refresh my memory a little bit. And I didn't come up with anything related to what I saw, but it just got me thinking about how over such a relatively short period of time, like the blink of an eye, like in the grand scheme of things, but to us could be like 4 or 5, 6, 7 years, like so much growth can happen in that period of time.
Oh, yeah.
And musicianship and like we were talking about with mindset and how we approach things. And so with where you're at now with teaching and you're still playing and, you know, you've got girlfriend and, you know, jobs and all of this stuff going on, just looking at where your life is at now, you know, what do you think has been the best way you've kind of evolved your mindset over that course of time and like how you look at, you know, does everything kind of tie in together for you with like your musicianship and skills you learn from that? Does it, you know, what do you think is a good way for other people to kind of...
I think the general change has gone from actually my early time touring to now, because once I started to see the crowds really show up to the shows,
yeah,
that was, you know, the illusions of grandeur kind of idea that, oh, this can be it. I could really be the next big artist. We were getting picked up on radio shows when Beautiful hit the Billboard Top 40. I lost my shit.
Yeah.
But now that part's over and I have domesticated.
Huh.
Sure.
The mindset has really kind of shifted from one of like constant pursuit that what do I have to do? What do I have to do? What is the next step? What do I have to do? To just kind of really appreciating what I've got. And like, okay, I really enjoyed everything I got to do. How do I take care of where I'm at now? And how can I help someone else that is looking to do what I did? And so that's, I mean, a huge part of me moving to Colorado was the outdoors.
Right.
And there is something insanely therapeutic after, you know, a crazy hike or something when you get to sit on top of a mountain and you just really appreciate where you are and what you've got around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the music side of that is very much the same thing now. Is I get to appreciate everything I've already done. I've got pictures and videos I could look at if I want to. I've got a job that I enjoy. But if I'm bored at home, I've got my guitars right next to me.
Yeah.
So I get to go right over to it. And so it's definitely gone from like a uphill grind where everything had to be work all the time because I thought that was the only thing that was going to really be the dream, to being happy with where I am.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's definitely a healthy mindset to approach, and people could apply that to, you know, their life, even in their career pursuits.
Right.
Just not getting so wrapped up in yourself that you think that everything that you're doing is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Jesus goddamn Christ.
It had like a little rhythm to it.
Dude, that's
I
the
just broke
musician
that
brain.
fucking thing. So annoying. I hate this fucking office. I hate this fucking pandemic. Sorry.
I know. We were in that sweet studio that you know, that you would see in earlier
Right.
episodes
Yeah.
in person, and we're waiting for the time to go back to it, but making do with what we got in the meantime.
Making bacon.
Yeah.
Making bacon
Dude,
pancakes.
yeah.
That's
That's so
what we got
funny. You
on
just
Josh.
did the.
Yes,
Do you like pancakes?
I do.
Have you ever done this crazy thing
Go on.
where you cook some bacon, depending the texture you like, crumbly, I like chewy, whatever, and then you chop it up, and then you put it into the pancake batter, and then you make the pancake with the little bacon bits inside, and then you can always, and then as you do it, you say, "I'm making bacon pancakes." Have you ever done that?
I haven't done that,
Okay,
but I've watched Adventure Time and I've got that song stuck in my head.
there you go. He got the reference. Okay, we can land that plane now, baby.
Yeah. Let's land the plane.
Crushing it,
Josh,
crushing it.
Yeah. Josh, thank you so much for coming on here and being a guest. You are somebody that usually inspires me on the regular with, you know, even little things you're doing, getting up, staying consistent with exercising, teaching, you know, young kids how to rock out and get into music. Like, I think you got a really inspiring thing for me anyway, just seeing that on the regular. So I'm glad I got a chance to talk
Thanks,
to you.
buddy.
And
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to have you. Good chill, man.
So,
Oh, one last thing though, because you are
Yeah.
a bit of a fitness guru, I get some free advice. So I'm going to ask you, like,
the trouble area for this cat is glute town. What do I do? Especially the back part, like the back where the hip and that that whole top side area. That's like I'm just like a bag of fat. Right, I'll show you all on the camera. I don't give a fuck.
I
I'm
was about to say,
right here.
Hold on, because your screen's freezing up on me a little bit, so I can't actually see
God damn it! It is for you.
where on your ass we're talking about.
So you go to like your lower lumbar, and then right beside that, I have like these pockets. Like if I was a horse, they'd be like my saddlebags. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, how do you work those, bro? I'm in need, dog. I don't know. I do the leg lifts and all this shit.
So the first thing to look at isn't necessarily the exercises; it's the diet.
Oh, do we have to talk about my diet? It's not great.
That's the professional side of me talking. But
okay, that's fair.
Really, if it's just like a trouble area kind of thing, but it's body fat specifically that you're talking about, it's a really common myth that you can target fat loss. So like there are people that are like, oh, I've got all this extra arm skin under my triceps.
Yeah.
What can I do to target? You can't. You lose weight
let it dangle
and try to tighten up the muscles so that it actually fits the shape. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Try to build into it.
The number one thing for trouble areas like that is typically just look at your diet and then do cardio. And then if it's still not getting the results you want, then you find out what exercise is.
Okay. So what's the number one food to avoid? And I'll leave you alone. I mean, assume I eat everything.
Assuming you eat everything.
Like
number
I mean, soil. Like I got pica like a pregnant woman. Like I eat grass this morning.
Like how specific do you want to get? Because like I could never tell you to eat a Slim Jim. You know what I mean?
I don't unless I'm dying of hunger. I never do because they taste so weird. But I mean, like I'm the kind of person that's like, I have a bowl of oatmeal and I'll have a pizza for dinner and that's my day, and that's 4 days a week. Bowl of oatmeal because it's healthy.
That's the pizza. Yeah, I know. I'm not happy about that answer either.
But it is what it is.
For most people, the easy things to kind of start to cut out are alcohol and sugar.
Yeah, alcohol's gone.
Alcohol is just a real common one for a lot of people. It's 7 calories in a gram, so it's the second highest in terms of just straight calorie count.
Oh yeah,
you can possibly get. And then sugar, for most people at least, is part of a lazy food. It's candy or sweets or something. So not something that you're having while you're out on a hike necessarily. It's during a movie.
Right.
And
sitting
when
around.
you don't use those sugars, your body converts them to fat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the top 2 things for most people are sugar and fat, or sugar and alcohol.
Right.
Okay. Well, I've been leaning into the junk food for years because I've been, because I used to drink to excess, as the gentlemen say. And now it's been a few years since I haven't, and ever since then I was just like, you can have a milkshake every fucking night of the week because you're sober. But now I'm 39 and my body's like, yeah, you think you have a milkshake every day, you're going to die, bitch. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that advice, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all of the input and advice that we've gotten on here today, and I think that there's some cool stories in there. So I'll definitely have to hit you up soon for my own exercise input, but that's for another time.
He needs bulks.
Yeah, I was gonna say my goal right now is just to move every day, and I've been exercising for a half hour every day, and now that I'm getting and I've been consistently on that for a couple weeks now, which I'm actually doing better because I didn't go gung ho all at once. So, which
all
is
about the consistency.
Yeah, and so now that I've been doing that, it's like, oh, now you got to actually start looking at like what you're eating. So it's one step at a time.
Yes, sir.
One step closer to
cool,
the
man.
edge.
Yes. Cool. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, brother.
guide you through the whole experience, or is that like not your bag?
Yes, Jesse, that's where the real Dave is right now.
He never returned.
He's been gone for 3 months.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, it's become really commercialized, the whole trip, but the idea of it very much so. I was really
Okay.
influenced by Carlos Castaneda's books and stuff about the teachings of Don Juan, and I mean, a lot of it comes back to like Puerto Rican heritage, and like there's a lot of spiritual mysticism stuff, and
Mhm.
there might not be a direct connection between that and like the entheogen type of drugs, but I feel like there is a little bit. It's about the spiritual journey for me, big time.
Yeah.
And I like licking things. I mean, you lick things. It's like Josh was saying. It's like you can make friends, and it's like, well, you can make friends by talking to people, or you could walk up in a club and lick them and say, "I'm in a band." And for decades, that worked for me.
That's the Davey method he's pioneered, and it works for him apparently. So there you go. Yeah, I would have to say hard pass on the. I'd have to say hard pass on the shaman experience in South America. I'd rather.
Give me your top 2 reasons why no. Why is it not for JD?
I don't want to be in something for that long, and also
That's what he said.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
sorry.
That's my second reason, because that's going to be going on for way too long, and then that's going to be like my grandpa's yelling at me like that, and then it's going to be like, somebody else, from my past that I don't want to experience. So it's like, yeah, I just don't want to deal with all that. That sounds like the opposite of why I would want the experience.
I mean, it's just it's a sensible kind of. I mean, aversion is not. It's a wariness about that type of experience, and it's understandable. It's like, does it fit with your personal sensibilities? You feel not necessarily. I'm looking for an experience that I can later qualify or quantify. I'm not. Repeat experiences all seem to go like, this is how I grade them. So I figure new experiences, whether or not I'm really into the idea, is like they're worth trying, and that's always one I wanted to try. Especially when you brought up seeing like somebody, like somebody not with us anymore. Like that's why I want to do it. Like, even if it was just the fucking ayahuasca and I was talking to my mom, fucking worth the trip. Worth the trip times $2,000. $2,000. It's a lot of money in Dave's wallet, Jesse.
Yeah, that's a lot of money in mine too.
Yeah.
That's I was gonna
that's
say
like adjusted for inflation, but for bass players, it's like $2,000 in regular money is actually like $100,000 in bass player currency.
I know, it's like I get so many gears with that. I get so much gear.
Right? This is like, I can buy so much shit at Winco with this. Oh my god.
Yeah, or it's like not even real life purchases. That's like, oh man, I could get a compressor. I get some microphones. I could get if you wanted to splurge, it's like, I could get a American P bass or something. It's
right?
Like,
we're going to the pawn shop and we're going to pick up some shit. Oh yeah.
Yeah. $2,000 is a working man's bass and like potentially a new amp rig if you wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Like if you budget your money, like depending on where you're getting all your stuff, like that's $2,000 could like have you set for life.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I got so excited about it. I was like, yeah, let's stop thinking about it and go do it. All right.
I know.
Chitty, bang, bang.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Good times. Well, this is an outro and an intro.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is it's
a Mobius strip of intro.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And real quick, as with the end of every episode, thank you so much for tuning in, hearing our random discussions on things, our stories about life, our point of views expressed within. We appreciate you very much, citizen, fellow listener, for taking the ride with us.
This is where I say similar pre-prepared obligatory statement about how you're this and that, but I'd rather you fill in the blanks. I'm a Sonic City Council member, and I am worth, because I listen to David and Jesse times a week, and I also am looking forward to buying amount of their merch when they have it available online. See, you guys can
Yes.
talk for yourselves. I love my meat bags.
Yes. What should the first piece of merch be? T-shirt, hat, beer koozie?
Oh,
What should we do? Yeah.
and we will hire
there
Cisco
you go.
to promote it. You're
Yes.
too young to even remember that cat. You remember Cisco? He was the thong song guy.
No, I remember.
Okay.
I remember. Yeah.
He said, to quote, "Baby, make your booty go." And in 2002, I want to say, we were all with it. We were all like, yes. Anyway, get the fuck out of here, Sonic City. Bye.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amped Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.